Marco and I just wanted to get away for a while. We were two college students, burnt out from summer classes. When he found a remote patch of public land in the middle of Nevada, with no cell signal, no rules, just open land, it sounded perfect. Just sand, sky, and no one around. We left at dawn on a Friday. 6 hours driving from Carson City with a trunk full of camping gear, gas station snacks, and a case of warm beer. Our camp setup was basic: 2 tents, a folding table, and a fire ring made from stacked rocks. That was enough. We set everything up before sundown, cracked open some beers, and watched the sky fade from orange to navy blue. Then black and star dash filled. It was beautiful in that eerie, heavy silence. No wind, no bugs, just a desert breathing around us. The kind of quiet where your thoughts start screaming. We roasted hot dogs over the fire, joked about nonsense, and made up stories: buried treasure, crashed UFOs, things like that. Marco laughed and said he'd sell a flying saucer to the government for some fancy beer. I told him I'd keep it and disappear. It was one of those nights you don't realize is the last normal one until it's far behind you. Around midnight, we turned in. Marco's tent was maybe 20 feet from mine, not far, but far enough that I'd only hear him if he shouted. We left a flashlight switched on between our tents, sitting on a stump, just in case. I don't know what time it was. When I woke up, at first, I thought it was a dream. That hazy confusion when your brain hasn't caught up yet. But I was awake. I knew it because I heard something. Movement. Footsteps. Slow. Light. Like someone trying not to be heard. I sat up and slowly unzipped my tent an inch. Looked out. Only Marco's silhouette, his tent glowing faintly under the stars. I whispered his name. No reply. Then I heard another whisper, but it didn't come from him. It was low, muffled, like someone crouched outside his tent, speaking softly. I couldn't make out words, only the tone, gentle, like coaxing a scared dog. I froze. The sound stopped. Total silence. I waited a full minute before lying back down, wide-eyed in the dark. I don't remember falling asleep again. What I do remember is Marco screaming. I shot up, unzipped the tent, and the night outside was lit orange. His tent was on fire. The flames roared high, and I could see his silhouette thrashing inside. Barefoot, yelling, I ran toward him. Without thinking, I grabbed the tent and tore a hole through the melting nylon. Inside, Marco was tangled in his sleeping bag, trying to crawl out. His arms were red, his shirt half melted to his chest, coughing, screaming, trying to speak. I dragged him out, away from the fire, and dumped our cooler water on him. It hissed on contact with his skin. His hands shook so badly, I had to hold his water bottle to his lips. We sat there in the dirt, trembling. The tent was gone, just poles and a blackened frame. I kept asking what happened. He kept repeating the same thing. There was someone in the tent. It wasn't you. It wasn't you. At first, I thought he was delirious. The look in his eyes, wild, darting, searching it, wasn't confusion. It was raw, primal fear. I grabbed the flashlight and scanned the area. The light didn't go far. I didn't see anyone. No gear, no footprints, nothing. And yet, I didn't feel alone. We stayed up until sunrise, backs against each other. Marco whimpered off and on. I kept my hand on the camp hatchet, though I had no idea what I'd do with it. When the light finally came, I packed what I could. Marco's arms were blistered and peeling. I drove him to the nearest hospital, nearly 2 hours away. He stared out the window the whole time. Didn't say a word. Like part of him never left that desert. Later that day, we gave statements to the sheriff. They took pictures, documented the fire site, said they'd send someone out to check, but they didn't sound hopeful. It's remote. No cameras, no tire tracks, no prints. When I mentioned the whispering, the deputy just shrugged. Could have been the wind, he said. I almost laughed. The wind doesn't call your name. The wind doesn't crouch beside your tent. Marco was never the same after that. He dropped out of college that fall, moved in with his uncle in Montana. We kept in touch for a while, but he never talked about that night. Not once. I brought it up on a call once. He hung up. A year later, he blocked me. I don't blame him. I think he remembers more than he ever said. We thought we were alone, but we were being watched, and maybe hunted. I've always had a strange attraction to abandoned places. Not so much for the ruins themselves, but for the silence they leave behind. Faded gas stations, forgotten mines, roads swallowed by time, places where humanity stopped existing, but its bones still lie on the surface. They make me feel more alive. So, in the fall of 2021, I took a week off and headed out to the desert near Yucca, Arizona. The plan was simple. A few hikes, some photography, maybe mark some unmapped shafts. Nothing extreme, just a small solo adventure. The weather was perfect, cool at night, mild during the day, and clear skies. I brought all the right gear: topographic map, 2 GPS units, first aid kit, satellite phone, and my GoPro mounted to my chest rig. I'd read about an old zinc mine west of town, barely marked on any records. No roads led there, just a few faint off-road trails. I parked where my Jeep could still turn around and set out on foot. About an hour in, I found the first shaft. Its entrance was half covered by rotted wooden boards. I circled it until I found some old anchor points in the rock. Using my harness and rope, I lowered myself about 15 feet. The ground was compacted dirt, scattered with rusted tools, broken shovels, old barrels, rotting wood. Typical abandoned mine junk, but that's not what caught my eye. It was the footprints, fresh, too fresh, not boot prints, like mine something lighter, narrower. Maybe a woman's, maybe a kid's. I couldn't tell. The tracks disappeared into one of the side tunnels, swallowed by darkness. I froze. It wasn't fear, exactly, it was something else, like my body tensed up before my brain could form a thought. I took a step back, then another dot. Silence, except for a faint sound. Pebbles shifting deeper in the shaft, just enough to make you feel watched. I didn't run, didn't scream, just climbed back up. Once I reached the surface, I sat on the edge, trying to reason through it. Maybe someone had gone in before me, but where were they now? I hadn't seen another vehicle, no other signs of life. Yet, that feeling wouldn't go away. After 20 minutes of staring into the empty landscape, I decided I'd had enough for the day. I took a few photos, marked the shaft on my map, and left. That night, I camped in a dry canyon, about a mile from the site. Beautiful spot, smooth rocks, wind-shaped ridges, and total silence. Too much silence. I tried to distract myself, cooked something, watched a dumb video on my phone. Before going to sleep, I reviewed the GoPro footage. Everything looked normal, till the moment I backed away from the prints. That's when the audio got distorted. Not wind, not static, something deeper, a breath, slow and steady. Not mine. I froze, replayed it. Again, that breath. Then, just before the video cut battery, I heard something else. A single footstep. Close. I barely slept that night. Every breeze or rustle outside the tent had me wide awake. Around 3 a.m., I heard something scraping along the fabric of my tent, like sand being dragged across it. I didn't unzip. I just sat there, clutching my knife, waiting. It never came back. Next morning, I packed early. I hadn't heard anything more overnight, but I didn't want to linger. I kept glancing behind me as I hiked. Not out of caution anymore, out of fear. Halfway back to my Jeep, I took a wrong turn through a dry wash and ended up near another shaft I hadn't noticed before. No tracks, no signs of recent entry. but something made me pause. Scratched faintly into the support beams were 5 marks, 4 vertical, 1 diagonal, slashing through, like someone had been counting days, people. I got back to my Jeep and drove away without looking back. A few days later, at home, I reviewed the footage again. Better headphones, I heard more. The breathing was still there, but now I could make out a faint metallic sound, like something scraping rock, like a chain dragging. And just before the clip ended, there was a shuffling sound, something dragging 1 foot behind the other. But the part that hit me hardest, the final 3 seconds. As I was climbing out, my GoPro caught something faint under the crunch of my boots. Another set of footsteps, matching mine. I didn't find a mine. I found something else, and I think it wanted me to stay. I'm a naturalist. I spend most of the year alone deep in forests, deserts, and forgotten valleys. I study animal behavior, do environmental surveys, set up cameras and acoustic sensors, and write reports no one really reads. It's a job that requires patience, solitude. In the spring of 2021, I was working in a desolate stretch of southern New Mexico, near some old oil service roads. No signal, no homes, just dry ground, scrubby plants, and miles of silence. I was there to monitor nocturnal rodent activity along an ancient riverbed. By day 3, I was sunburned, my lips were cracked from the wind, and my gear smelled like dust and sweat. I had set up camp in a small clearing between 2 rocky ridges. Perfect spot. No noise, no light pollution, just raw desert. The evening was calm. I lit my little propane stove, made some dehydrated soup, and scribbled a few notes as the sky shifted from gold to deep blue. Before crawling into my tent, I sat on a rock and watched the stars. There, the sky looks unreal-layered, with stars pulsing with quiet energy. Moments like that are why I do this job. They make you feel tiny, but also part of something ancient and permanent. That's when I noticed it. A glow, faint, flickering, like someone walking with a flashlight. It was far off, maybe 400 yards, moving between the shrubs. I stood up and waved my headlamp, hoping to be seen. No reaction. The light didn't pause. It just kept moving in a lazy arc, and then vanished. I figured it could be another surveyor, or maybe a landowner checking a pipeline. Unusual, but not impossible. 10 minutes later, though, it reappeared. Closer this time. Same movement. Same silence. I called out, "You all right out there?" Nothing. No engine, no voice. It's just that floating light. I tried to laugh it off. Told myself it could be a trick of the heat or some night worker with bad timing. I zipped the tent shut, climbed into the sleeping bag, tried to sleep. I couldn't. Then the light came back. This time it was still. No more bobbing. Aimed directly at my tent. The whole interior lit up like a spotlight. I froze, lying on my side, holding my breath. My heart thundered in my throat. I started counting seconds. Got to 300 before losing track. The light didn't shift. Just stayed locked on my tent wall. I thought I heard footsteps. 1 or 2. Very faint. Then, nothing. My arms started to ache from how stiff I was. My multi-tool was in my boot by the flap, but I didn't dare reach for it. Then, the light disappeared. Not like it moved. Just gone. At sunrise, I slowly unzipped the tent. Everything looked normal. No light, no people. I walked in a wide circle around camp. No tracks, no broken branches. Just one thing, about 30 feet away, in the exact direction the light had come from. I saw a patch of disturbed earth, as if someone had knelt there. It wasn't clear, but it looked intentional. I didn't stay long. A week after returning home, I got an envelope with no return address. Inside, a single smooth gray stone. Nothing. Odd. except it was identical to the gravel I saw near that spot in the desert. Same weight, same texture. Definitely not from anywhere near my home. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. I didn't post about it, didn't share the location, but my license plate that was visible the entire time. And if someone knows where to look, they can find out more than you think from just a plate. The next morning, I went to a ranger station and told the man at the desk everything. He listened, took notes. When I finished, he tapped his pen twice and said, "We hear stories like that now and then. Could be pranksters. Could be worse." I asked what he meant by worse. He shrugged. People disappear out there. Others come to do things they don't want seen. That was it. No follow dash up. Since then, I've gone on plenty more trips. I've heard coyotes scream like children and seen mountain lions pace the edges of my camp. But that light, so steady and silent, still haunts me because whatever it wasn't lost. It wasn't asking for help. It knew exactly where I was. No, it didn't want to talk. It was my favorite kind of trip. Solo, quiet, and wide open. I was somewhere in the remote north of Arizona, close to the Utah border, surrounded by silent canyons and weathered plateaus. No cell service, no towns, just red dust, ancient stone, and a sky that never seemed to end. I had 2 weeks off, my truck loaded with supplies, and one simple plan: camp in peace for a few days, take some photos, write, and then move north. I wasn't looking for adventure. I was looking for silence. The first night was perfect. I found a natural alcove protected from the wind, set up my tent, heated up some soup, and sat with a beer, watching the stars appear. Total quiet, kind you forget you've been missing. The next morning, I saw another vehicle parked a few 100 feet away. A beat-up blue pickup, dusty and dented. I felt annoyed at first. There was plenty of open land out here. Why park so close? But it was public land. He had every right to be there. Then I saw him, an old man, wiry and sunburned, with a long white beard that looked more mountain hermit than weekend camper. He raised a hand and gave a slight nod. I nodded back. He didn't say anything, didn't come over, disappeared behind his truck to sort through his gear. He didn't set up a tent. The tarp stretched between 2 poles and a few neatly arranged plastic bins. No cooler, no firewood. It's just him and those containers. But what struck me was this. He started digging. Not a fire pit, not a trench, a grave-sized hole, rectangular, deep, at least 6 feet long. He dug with no rush. Calm, precise, like he'd done this 100 times before. Eventually, I walked over, curiosity winning out. "Burying treasure out here," I joked. He looked up and gave a slow, fake smile. "Just in case I find someone worth burying." Danny laughed. Not loud, not wild, just a small, steady laugh that made my skin crawl. I chuckled awkwardly, gave a half wave, and walked back to my camp. Every instinct told me to leave, but I talked myself down. Maybe he was just eccentric. Maybe it was all a weird sense of humor. That evening, I made dinner and tried to read, but I couldn't focus. I kept glancing in his direction. He was still digging. Now, adding rough wooden boards around the edges, like framing something. That night in my tent, I heard the wind, and something else. Metal striking stone, steady, deliberate noise. I peeked out. Tan was still on, casting an orange glow under the tarp. I saw him standing beside the hole, not working, staring into it. The next morning, I debated packing up. But I told myself I was overreacting. Just one more night. That evening, I stayed on my side of the clearing, lit a small fire, made dinner, tried to pretend he wasn't there. But I kept hearing things. Twigs, snapping near the tent. Soft footsteps just outside the reach of the firelight. Once, I swore I saw his silhouette standing on a nearby ridge, watching. When I turned my headlamp in that direction, he was gone. Before going to bed, I saw he had covered the pit with a blue tarp, weighed down with rocks, but it wasn't flat. Something underneath it was bulging. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of footsteps. Not an animal, slow, controlled, circling my tent. Once, then again, then silence. I didn't move. My multi-tool was in my boot by the flap, but I didn't dare reach for it. At one point, I heard a single scrape, like a shovel. Then nothing. When dawn finally broke, I unzipped my tent slowly. He was gone. No truck, no tarp, no pit. Just a patch of disturbed ground, and drag marks leading off into the brush. I followed them for maybe 10 feet, then stopped. I didn't want to see what was at the end. I packed up fast, no breakfast, loaded my gear, and drove until I saw a highway sign. Later that day, I called the sheriff, gave the coordinates, told him everything. He listened, asked if I had any photos. Didn't. I wasn't thinking clearly at the time. He said they'd send someone out to check. I doubt they ever did, but that man, he wasn't camping. He was waiting. And I think he was trying to decide if I belonged in that hole.